Welcome everyone to the Cardano Effect podcast, episode 62. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. So Rick and myself are the hosts of the Cardano Effect podcast today. We have a very special guest. I'm going to make this as short as possible because we have a lot of questions in store today. I want to remind everyone that I receive a lot of questions about what people can do to support this project. One thing you can do is subscribe to the Cardano Effect podcast. Our podcast is growing, the SEO is increasing, and we're trying to be as visible to every single crypto community out there. And when people are interested in the Cardano project in the future, this is a perfect place for them to get more information. So we have a very, very, very special guest today. So I want to give the financial disclaimer. None of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor. And if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So without further ado, Rick and I are in the same time zones right now. How are you doing this morning? What's going on? What's happening, Rick?
Hey, I'm doing great, Philippe. We do have a special guest today. We have Mr. Nathan Kaiser, and I'll be introducing him shortly. I would like to give a shout out to IOHK for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you very much, IOHK, for supporting this podcast. I'd also like to remind viewers that this podcast is available on all major audio streaming apps and services. So if you want to listen to this podcast while you're working out or driving in your car, it's a great place to reach out and get a hold of the podcast. So I'd like to move on to our special guest. Chairperson of the Cardano Foundation and General Counsel of IOHK, Mr. Nathan Kaiser, is with us today. And our viewers, you see pictures of him from all over the world in the media. He's all over the planet. Nathan, thank you for coming on the podcast today. Where are you dialing in from and how's it going?
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Philippe, for having me. It's really a great honor to be on your podcast. And I've listened to many of them, and now I'm on it, which is really special, I have to say. I'm dialing in from a snowstorm. I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Everything is closed. Everything is shut down. There's a couple of inches of snow. So I'm in a hotel, very makeshift, but I'm here. I hear you. You hear me. We're all set.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're all set up. And Nathan, I'm very glad you came on the podcast. And one of the first things we like to do is figure out, let's get to know Nathan Kaiser. Who's Nathan Kaiser? Like, where were you born? Where did you grow up? Where are you a citizen from? And where are you at now? So let's start off with where are you originally from? What country?
Right. So I get that question a lot now because, as you say, I'm like sort of, some people call me the international man of mystery. And I grew up in what I call cow country. It's really cow country. I grew up next to two farms in Switzerland, very countryside. Literally, when I was a kid, I would walk over to the farm and see how they would, back then, just like still milk the cows with hands, and then it switched to machines. I sort of did this, did that, spent some time in France, spent some time in different places. Spent a year in the US when I was a senior at high school in Pennsylvania. After passing the bar, I moved to Asia and spent 20 years in Greater China. So that was really between Taipei, Beijing, Hong Kong, and a lot of time in Shanghai. And now I'm here in Cambridge, so I'm hitting the US again, and it's good to be here.
Excellent. And you speak 5 different languages. Not all of them. What's your primary language?
Well, my mother tongue is Swiss German, which is sort of the oral language you speak in Switzerland, and the part of Switzerland I grew up with. I think 5, it depends on how you count. Yeah, I'm comfortable in a couple, let's put it that way. I'm comfortable in French, English, Mandarin, and German, obviously.
Excellent.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks for that introduction. So we're going to move into some of the more granular stuff of what's going on with the Cardano Foundation. So for all those that are just tuning into the podcast or are not familiar with how Cardano works, there are 3 entities that comprise this project. It's IOHK, Emergo, and the Cardano Foundation. We see IOHK and Emergo working on the development of the code, making sure that staking is going forward, smart contracts are moving forward. But the purpose of the Cardano Foundation is this community aspect of Cardano. So the purpose of today's podcast, what I want the viewers, the listeners to get from this podcast is the role that Cardano Foundation plays in this project. So can you tell us a little bit more about maybe the structure of the Cardano Foundation and what the mission statement is?
Right. When you say granular, let's do the granular stuff. For the very granular response that I give to that question that I get at every single meetup, I always give the lazy answer, which is go on our website, look up our website, and it will give the 5 missions right there. No, that's the lazy answer. But I think the less lazy answer, but also the more difficult one, is the foundation is here to grow the Cardano project and to increase adoption. That's basically the overall mission statement. Now, what does adoption mean? That's where it gets really granular and difficult. Adoption means a lot of things, and we're also grappling with the definition of this. Adoption means people use it. And then what does people mean? People can mean single people, single individuals, but it can also mean companies, small companies. It can mean developers. So there's a developer community. There is a holder community. There's a staking community. There is a stake pool community, which is now very recent with our staking testnet. And then there is an adoption community for use cases, and use cases is a rabbit hole that becomes very large. Use cases, one of the main use cases of what we call a cryptocurrency is payments, storage of value. That's a big use case. And so adoption through that use. And then other use cases that we see is really identity management, is supply chain, is related to identity management. It's maybe KYC solutions, and so on. And so adoption also means that the Cardano protocol is used for these. Obviously, part of what I just said will require our next era, which is Goguen, on which IOHK is very busy coding with. And then we'll see. So we're also sort of in parallel doing everything. That's also part of that complicated answer. What does Cardano do? What does the Cardano Foundation do? What does America do? What does IOHK do? We do a lot of stuff at the same time. We finished the current Shelly area. We need to implement that, doing this. And then we're going to do Goguen. And in parallel, we're looking at use cases in order to further adoption.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, what keeps you busy on a day-to-day basis? I've seen videos and photos of you everywhere, like at meetups, at speaking engagements, attending the different types of meetings out there in the crypto world. And is it tea and crumpets with the royalty? Do you got to go in the courtroom? You know, what keeps Nathan Kaiser busy every day? What's a day-to-day grind?
Well, let me answer the day-to-day grind first, and then I'll get to the see Nathan everywhere. So the day-to-day grind is really a real mix. It's a real mix, meaning it's everything from community, social networks. You deal with the online community, and when I say we, it means we. It doesn't mean I. It means we have our community managers and so on, the staff. It's dealing with HR. It's dealing with finances. It's dealing with management. It's dealing with outreach to these, what we call stakeholders. So that's not the stake in staking, but stakeholders. And that means companies, small and big. That means the ecosystem. No, I think that's the term ecosystem is important. So managing the ecosystem, which obviously includes also governmental agencies, both small and big countries and small and big agencies, that's the daily grind. It's truly a grind. To the second part where you say, well, you see Nathan everywhere. So that's largely just, I wouldn't say cheating, but the trick is that when I travel, I will post. When I don't travel, I won't post. So that gives everybody the impression I'm traveling all the time. But it's true. I am taking about 2 flights a week in average. I try to make the trips short and concise and busy with a dense schedule. And then I'm back home again. I got 2 kids. I got a wife, and they need their attention as well.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to touch on one of the tenets on the Cardano Foundation website, and it's the SHAPE legislation and commercial standards. And as a U.S. citizen, we're both U.S. citizens here. Sorry. There's a lot of gray area in cryptocurrency as far as when legislation is going to move cryptocurrency forward. So I'm assuming, do you have bespoke solutions for each country that you're handling these legislation or these commercial standards? Do you have a certain strategy for maybe the Europe or the Americas or Asia when you are trying to push the project forward or push cryptocurrency forward in general?
Right. I think you just framed it absolutely correctly in the latter part. No, it's really pushed cryptocurrencies and crypto and blockchain and DLT as an overall. No, as I've said repeatedly, and I'll say it again, I'm glad to say it, is that this is not about a single project, but this is about the changing the world with a new technology. And so if you want to say the adversary in a way is the whole entire current system. And you can't do that as one company or one protocol or one project. So this is the whole industry, the crypto industry, where we're all actually very friendly competitors with regular exchange, and us teaming up together for these lobbying and shaping legislation efforts. So that's why actually all three of us, IOHK, Emergo, and the Cardano Foundation, have each joined various trade associations, chambers, lobbying efforts to join efforts with others in the space. And others can mean, again, what I call ecosystem, can mean exchanges, that can mean payment service providers, that can mean coding, think tanks, and obviously even banks, that few banks that say that we wanna be part of the next thing, and also, and that's important, other protocols. So we team up with other protocols because we share our worries and concerns, and we share our interests. And maybe a very good example is staking, proof of stake versus proof of work, where I personally have said that for longer than a year. Proof of work works, and we see that with Bitcoin, and that's great. But is it gonna be here in 100 years? No, it's not. No, we know it's not. It's proof of stake it's gonna be the next solution, and that's sort of, I always compare proof of work with the IC, the internal combustion engine, which works. No, cars run by fuel work, but they're not going to be a thing of the future. So in proof of stake, there is the Proof of Stake Alliance as an example, which is a US-based sort of a lobbying and industry effort to address specific worries and issues we have, or the protocols have, with regard to US legislation, as an example. Yeah.
Okay. And switching over to the facilitating partnerships tab of the Cardano Foundation. So we see that the Cardano Foundation has teamed up with a couple of companies. I believe Cody, there's Confidio, there's I see Quantarol. I'm not sure if the Cardano Foundation is responsible for that, but this is more of a general question when you are seeking out partnerships. Does the Cardano Foundation act as more of a venture capitalist firm when they are looking for companies to build solutions on Cardano? Or is it more like these companies are coming after the Cardano Foundation or coming to you because they see what Cardano can offer or will offer in the future?
Right. Let me just say one thing first. I'm very happy, Philippe, that you are on our website, because that's what I said to everybody. Please check our website. It really helps. So just that being said, right. So building relationships and partnerships, or facilitating partnerships, is a broad term. And so within the three entities, we have constant discussions on what this means and who builds what, to what effect, and under what title. And basically, this is a whole can of worms. One is that you can't partner up with every single company that has an interest. No, there are so many startups, small and bigger ones, and so many companies that say, oh, we want to do something with Cardano. And so the triage is extremely important, because it's a capacity and resource problem. And when I say capacity and resource problem, that goes for all three of us, IOHK, Emergo, and the Cardano Foundation. So the first nut to crack is really the triage and say, what is worth pursuing? Because every pursuit takes up resources, management resources, and ultimately time and money. Yeah. So the second nut that we crack on an almost daily basis, or probably really on a daily basis, is who does what. And you mentioned, I think, investment. So clearly, Emergo is what you would call the investment arm that invests into companies, and that's what they do. And with IOHK and the Cardano Foundation within the Cardano ecosystem, that's not what we do by default. And actually within the Cardano Foundation, legally speaking, it's pretty tricky business to invest as a foundation into a private company. And there's ways of doing this if it's necessary and appropriate, and we're also building up that capacity, which requires tricky corporate structures and the appropriate licenses to do everything in a very transparent and above the board fashion. And we're doing that. But even drilling even more down, what the Cardano Foundation does, it facilitates the partnership. So we talk to a lot of people, and then we do that triage, and we do filter out what's worth it or what we deem is possibly worth it. And we maintain that relationship and that discussion, and finally take a decision of, oh, here we could do something. We then, depending on what the case is, and there is the scope is very broad of what a partnership can mean. That can mean you do something for me, or I do something for you, or he does something for her, and so on. Or the money flows that way, this way, or no money flows at all, because it's maybe not necessary that money flows. And so what we do is, with a specific project, we will then, depending on what it is, shoot it to IOHK and say, sorry guys, this is not really something for us. Maybe you can do something with it. Or you shoot it to Emergo and say, Emergo guys, they're looking for money, they're looking for investment. That's up your sleeve. Please do take care of it. And then again, they will do the same thing. They will again do the triage and say, yeah, we're going to move this forward or not. And, more often than not, actually also they will come back and say, no, this is not really something for us. But please, the Cardano Foundation having a broader scope, can you maintain the relationship? Because maybe, for example, Goguen, the smart contract layer, is not ready. So we can't really move forward with project XYZ. But can you please maintain the relationship on a friendly basis? And then that's what we'll do at the Cardano Foundation.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I can imagine, based on your description, between Emergo, Cardano Foundation, and IOHK, there are certain areas where there's overlap. And so you got to kind of manage that overlap and say, oh, this isn't, they came to us, but they need to go to you, and then you pass it over. And so what do you find? I really like Philippe's question there. What do you find happens more often than not? Do people come to Cardano to join with Cardano, or do you have to reach out to them, or is it a combination of both? It works both ways. What happens most often? Combination of both?
That's probably one of the easiest answer on this podcast. Yeah.
Nathan, the good thing about answering these questions on the podcast is thousands of people are going to see it. So when you answer it on here, a lot more people.
That's right. It makes a lot more. Yeah, it's a more efficient way of broadcasting that. The simple answer is really that more often than not, they come to us, but it also requires much more triage. And then for specific, really strategic partnerships, we reach out to other players and stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, with getting Yoroi on the App Store, that's Emergo would reach out to Apple in the App Store and say, hey, we need to get this loaded on there. So that's one way. That's just an example. But you're dealing with a lot bigger picture with establishing new partnerships and then figuring out which ones are the best, the way you described it as triage.
Right. I think when you say bigger picture, it's really, I don't want to overstate that. And I don't think it's good for people to think that we're like some wise guys with white beards in the clouds, and we're doing in a very big picture. We're doing that too, and we're trying to do that. But much of it is fairly trivial and just work of calling people and talking with them, meeting with them, having coffee. And it's actually not so glorious. No, it's sort of like this hotel room. It is what it is now. And that's good. That's good. So I wouldn't overstate that very big picture. We try to have that, but it's also just emails and phone calls and coffees.
Yeah. Okay. Nathan, okay. I'm glad to see you working in the trenches, because I thought you were that wise guy in the clouds with the gray beard.
Knowing so.
That's interesting. I'm glad to see that all three entities are working together. It streamlines efficiency and makes sure that the project is sustainable over years. So moving to this idea of sustainability, one of the pillars is ensuring stakeholder accountability. And I wonder, especially if you look at IOHK, you look at the Cardano roadmap, that brought a lot of people to this project. The idea that the goals are clearly defined and that there's an end goal for this project, whether that be smart contracts or staking, whatever you're looking forward to, or governance. Does the Cardano Foundation, are you running the Cardano Foundation like a sustainable business that's going to exist in 5-10 years? Is there an idea that there's going to be revenue that's generated by the Cardano Foundation and it's going to sustain itself for a long period of time? Or is this more of an entity that exists for a certain period of time just to help Cardano off its feet and then it's kind of dissipates? Or are we going to see the Cardano Foundation exist in 5-10 years or 15 years or 20 years? Indefinitely, yes.
Right. I think that's we have these discussions internally, and I've had that question obviously before. So I think there's many parts of an answer. So first of all, obviously a big meaning or interest of the foundation is the chaperoning effect for the next few years. And we need to make sure we can do that. But in addition, it's correct that with protocols in our Cardano protocol, being subject to change indefinitely in the future, we also do see an indefinite mission for the foundation in the future. And here it gets a bit more complicated now, because once what you call the Cardano protocol and the product, everything, the treasury, governance, and so on, staking is implemented, there will be a Cardano improvement proposal or Cardano improvement proposal protocol that will allow people to vote and allocate resources ultimately on a DApp. And that arguably would actually say like, oh, we don't need the foundation anymore because there is already a process that's on chain that allows for the never-ending improvement of the Cardano protocol. So that's one answer. On the other side, when you look at our mission statements again and on our website, we do think that there is a use case or a raison d'être for the foundation to continue for a lot longer time. So how do we do that? We have a definite amount of or a finite amount of funding, and we are now looking at what we would call, different people call it different things. You can call it a commercial strategy, you could call it a sustainability strategy, where in whatever ways possible, the foundation will have revenues or generate revenues that will enable the foundation to live on beyond its current means. That's no easy task, no? And notably, again, for legal reasons, but also for commercial reasons, because I give you an example, a very good example. When stake pooling, or now with staking and stake pooling, a question I was asked probably once a day for 2 months was, is the Cardano Foundation going to run its own stake pool? And it came so many times, and I was like, wow, I already answered this 65 times, but I'm going to answer it again. And now I have the benefit of your podcast. Thanks, Philippe, and thanks, Rick. To broaden that message is that the Cardano Foundation is exactly not running a stake pool. We're exactly doing the opposite. We're enabling others to run their stake pools. We don't want to take away the oxygen of the community and the ecosystem. We want to enable the ecosystem and provide the oxygen for it to grow now. So the Cardano Foundation cannot run its own stake pool. And that's not a proper way of, for example, call a spade, making money. So we need to find other things that does enable the ecosystem and generate some revenues for a long-term sustainability strategy that makes the ecosystem grow and not make it smaller. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that answer, because that helped answer one of the Reddit questions that we're going to get to later. There was a Reddit question about the Cardano Foundation operating as a DAO, and it's also a very common question people ask and say, is the Cardano Foundation going to run a pool? They also ask, is Emergo and IOHK? And I would like to add to what Nathan said. As far as Emergo and IOHK, I certainly hope they run a pool. There's a lot of ADA, and we need it to secure the blockchain. So if they can run a pool and make some money off of it, go for it. That's the whole point. That's why we're doing this. And that's really nice to know the Cardano Foundation plans on not running the pool yet, but enabling the pool operators, because there's a lot of pool operators out there putting in a whole lot of time. So thank you for that, Nathan. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to pass the mic back over to Philippe. Philippe, you're doing great with these questions from, the pillars. And thank you, Nathan, for answering these. We do have two questions. Can I hit on the easy one and the easy one, Philippe?
Go for it.
Two things Philippe and I always ask is, how did you first learn of Cardano? And what is the craziest thing that you've ever done? So before we go back to the pillars, Philippe, okay. So Nathan, how did you first learn of Cardano? What did you learn about it? What was your first contact?
Right. The first contact was probably 4 years ago, and I wouldn't really be able to pinpoint that down in time when I was in Hong Kong, and I'm still a Hong Kong resident. And IOHK approached me because there was a need for legal advice in Hong Kong, and it was simply, I always say that as a joke, but it's not really a joke. There's simply no other lawyer back in the days in Hong Kong who could correctly spell Bitcoin. And I kind of could correctly spell Bitcoin, so that was my initial contact. It's not hard to spell, actually.
Yeah. And so this first meeting with IOHK, was it some dark, seedy guy in the back alley wearing a trench coat, or was this did you meet like Charles and Jeremy?
No, you know what? That is what's called decentralization and the internet. No, it is the crypto world. I didn't meet the guys for a year or two. I never met anybody, nobody. I never saw a single soul. For at least a year or two. Yeah. That's the internet. Yeah.
It was the dark, seedy guy in the train. And the other question is, have you ever been to prison? Or what's the craziest thing you ever did? Which one? You ever been to prison? No?
We asked that. Go ahead.
No.
We asked that because we had John O'Connor on earlier in the podcast, and he was telling us this story about how he was traveling intra-country in Africa, and I guess he had too much currency on hand, and they threw him in prison. Yeah, so that's why we ask our guests that.
So I happened to be in prison a couple times, or almost, I would say, many times. It's just that I was there as a lawyer, so that kind of helped. And probably in that respect, the craziest story I've one of the craziest stories, and I've had a couple, because if you're a lawyer in Asia, it's sort of like it's a gift that keeps giving. But I recently told that story to my one of my two sons. Is that we were contacted. I was in Taipei. We were contacted by some lawyers in Geneva, Switzerland. And there was a Taiwanese diamond theft, a lady that stole, a diamond thief, a lady that stole diamonds off a Geneva diamond trader. And we knew that she took the plane to Taipei. And so we set up, we heard from the sort of, let's call it from the, you probably have to edit that one.
Embassy.
From the scene. There's like a scene. Like diamond traders is like a universe of its own. It's very strange. So they explained to me that there are ripples in the diamond universe. And you're like, what does that mean? What does ripples in the diamond universe mean? And they mean like the diamond industry is so tight and it's so private and under the radar. If somebody asks to sell a diamond that's just a bit bigger than the average size, it ripples, the information ripples. And so there were ripples in the diamond universe in Taipei that somebody was trying to sell diamonds. So we knew that was her. And then I went to my wife and I said, what we need is a fake buyer of the diamonds. And my wife was in the fashion industry, so she knew some rich older lady. And she contacted that rich older lady and said, you know what, could you be a fake diamond buyer? And the rich older lady was psyched. She loved it. No, it was like the excitement of her life. And so she presented herself at some diamond, actually another lady. So they're all ladies. It's all women. It's interesting. at a diamond trade and said, "Oh, I'm looking for really big diamonds." And the thief took the bait. So the trader went to the thief, or the thief went to the trader. And then we set up that initial viewing of the diamonds. And we worked with a local Taipei City police. And we had surrounded the building, but we didn't really have a good picture. We only had an old picture of her, a passport picture, but we didn't really have a good picture of the thief, what she looked like right now. And so the thief goes up, it meets the fake buyer with the real trader. Everything is set up. We're downstairs, and we just, although there was a setup with phone calls and coordination, we just didn't know who it was. We only heard, "Oh, she left. The thief left." And then, so we're on busy Taipei, it was lunchtime, very busy streets, very hustling and bustling. And we hear like she went down the elevator, but we couldn't see her. And there's like all these police in that don't wear uniforms now. When they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, we can't see her, we can't see her." And I'm turning around and I see that one lady getting into a car, and I'm the non-police guy. I'm the lawyer now. And I was pretty young back then. I was like, "You know what? I think I saw her now." And I'm just next to the commander of the police chief. Now I'm like, "I think that's her. Yeah, I think you maybe want to look that way now." And then everybody goes and it's her, no? And we grabbed her just when she was gonna go into the car with her like 20 years younger boyfriend. It was all unreal, no? And we grabbed her, and she had the diamonds on her in like bags and stuff. And she was grabbed like in a movie. We drove to the police station, and in the parking lot of the police station, everything filled with video cameras. She would spread out her belongings, or the police would help her to spread them out. And it was just all these diamonds and like these like jewelry, and it was just insane. Yeah. So that much for my story. And crazy. I did visit her in prison because we wanted to get more information out of her.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's awesome, man. I thought the life of a lawyer would be kind of boring, but that's more like James Bond kind of stuff. Yeah. People give lawyers a hard time, but there's only 2 times I ever needed a lawyer, and oh my gosh, I really needed a lawyer. So I appreciate the law work, because I don't steal diamonds, but yeah, diamonds on a blockchain. Diamonds on a blockchain, that'd be great.
There is such a thing. That's a thing. Diamonds on the blockchain. Look it up.
Oh, cool, man.
It's by the way, one of the many use cases. So that's identity and IoT. So identity, I'm going to make a little bracket here. Identity can mean identity management of individuals. So that's the 3 of us. But identity also means identity of physical objects. So that's IoT. And diamonds on the blockchain is something we're looking at. And that's an actual thing. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Wow. Interesting. Thanks for sharing. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. That's cool.
I wanted to shift over to something that we were talking about before. You said that when you first got involved with the Cardano project, it's very decentralized, so you didn't meet the main guys until maybe a year later. So how does the Cardano Foundation work? I know you guys are based in Zug, Switzerland, and I think you have between 20 and 30 employees. I just checked on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but is it very decentralized as to the distribution of the Cardano Foundation employees, or are most people based in Zug, or how does it work? How does information travel through the Cardano Foundation?
Right. The count I saw yesterday, and that changes almost every day in a good way, is 21 employees. So
21. Okay.
When we started, the new council started in January. We were sort of 4-ish, or there were 4-ish, and now we're 21. So we actually, it's a multiple of 5, within less than 1 year. How does it work? There's 2 answers. One is that you always need a physical office. It's just every company will tell you the same thing. You need an office for efficiency purposes, and that's even why hotels have meeting rooms. No, people need to meet physically, and there needs to be a location that's a go-to location for meetings, and that goes for the most decentralized companies. And by the way, I'm going to make a little breakout here. When you look at Apple, and Apple being the biggest company on earth, and kind of knowing what they're doing, they build a physical location, and I think they know why they built it. And the same goes for Google now. So they're decentralized. They got decentralized in the sense of they got companies all over the world. They got 200 countries and territories, but you still need an office. And so that's one answer. And the way maybe I can deep dive here a little bit. While the registered office is in Zug, we're now looking at the fact is that most people live in and around Zurich, and most action is in and around Zurich because it's the economic capital of Switzerland, 25 minutes out of Zug. So we're also looking into sort of having one or two places, and ultimately maybe only one places for as a physical space. We're still working on that. The other answer is, well, it's the internet, stupid. No? So we use Slack, we use the forum, we use Asana, we use obviously everything that's email and G Suite and the whole 9 yards that you use in a modern internet company. We use WhatsApp, we use everything. No? The truth is, our community is so broad that if you try to push the idea that you only install 2 out of 4 messenger apps on your phone, then at the Cardano Foundation you're wrong. No, that's not. You need to have everything. So we have Telegram, Signal, and we use that for different audiences, and even internally. No, it's even internally you have to use everything, and that's messy, and that's not always efficient. But the one ring that rules them all, like everybody's trying to build that ring and find that ring, but it just doesn't exist. So that being said, next to all the chats and the emails, I think a very important tool, and that's more of a personal remark, is you need to call each other. You need to talk to each other on the phone live. It's much more efficient with or without video. It's much more efficient to actually discuss stuff, and chatting back and forth is ultimately to manage projects. It's inefficient. No? So people need to talk, and that's the other thing. What I just said before, people need to see each other and have these coffees. That goes both internal and external. Yeah, and a beer, occasionally a beer.
I agree with you 100%. Voice communication is extremely important because you can have a dialogue that goes back and forth and create a better understanding. Whereas if you have written communication, although it's nice to have a written record, it's kind of like this line stands on its own, then this line stands on its own, and then you go, what was the real meaning behind this? Instead of like 1,000 different lines of text, what was the point? So what's the biggest challenge with that, having that huge decentralized? Is it the communications, or is it mission accomplishment? I know Philippe's going through the pillars, but what's the most difficult part to manage? Getting everybody on the same page? You're like, oh
right.
my God.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. So I think it's, let me start at something I've said many times. And again, thanks for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. People often talk about the bleeding edge. And what I always say internally and externally is that here at Cardano, we're actually at the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. And that's different. That's qualitatively, again, different. The internet, many internet companies are at bleeding edge, but if you do a cryptocurrency, if you do a protocol, if you do a decentralized protocol 3.0, you're at the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. What does that mean? That means you cannot have a set strategy. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a map. If you say you have a map, you're making up, you're lying. So we need to be all humble. Being at the bleeding edge is messy. It's messy. And that's like discovery of the Americas. It's not like somebody in Portugal took a ship, or in Spain took a ship and say, yeah, we're going to sail like this and this and this, and then it will be America, and we're going to settle down and build cities. No, it was messy, and there's collateral damage, there's wrong decisions and so on. And that's just how it is. It's maybe here, I wouldn't say it's a feature, another bug, but it's just the way it is if you're at the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. So when you say getting everybody on one page, that's something we struggle with. But here I say it's a feature, not a bug. We can't get everybody absolutely on the same page, because that's what decentralization is all about. And that's what the 3 entities are about. The 3 entities and the way they interact. And I've been asked many times the question, what's the legal relationship? What's the contract between Emergo and IOHK, and between IOHK and the foundation? There's no contract. there is no rigid legal clothing that ties everything together in very tight knots. And there shouldn't be. That's the feature now. It should wobble, and it has wobbled, and it wobbles because it allows the three entities to take up slack where one doesn't work. And I think Charles has said that himself. So this is a feature, not a bug. And the fact that things overlap and they move and they pull and they drag, that's by design. And so we can't get everybody on the same page because we have different opinions, different functions, different risk assessment, different degrees of risk averseness or risk friendliness. And so you can try to steer that, but you need to iterate, you need to be agile, not just in programming, but in the overall project.
You know, I like the way you described that because early on there was a rigid roadmap that had a whole timeline because that's what people want to see. They want to see what does the future look like, and it got wrecked. I mean, and that's fine. It got wrecked, but I like your description because it's a lot more accurate of reality. Is there's flexibility built into the creation of a cryptocurrency that currently does not exist and it's still under creation. How can you roadmap that? I like the current roadmap, which is a lot more broad. It gives a general schedule, a general idea of what we're trying to achieve. You got the vision of what you're trying to achieve, but you can't spell out every letter. And there's people out there on the forum. I work on the Cardano forum on the Telegram. They want you to spell out the letter and the date and the time and exactly what's going to happen. It's impossible. Can't do it.
If you're looking for safety and security and clarity and all that, and you're in crypto, you're probably in the wrong space. And I have said that to and then you can turn it the other way around. You know, when I've had that discussion with bankers, they say like, oh my God, crypto is so insecure and unclear and no clear roadmaps and untested waters. No. And then I say, so should we have bought like, blue chip stocks like GE or Lehman Brothers stocks? No. How did that go? No. So if you go back and you go to the old industries and buy railroad stocks, that worked well while it worked, and then it didn't. So yeah, if you're in for security, maybe try gold after all, or stay with the US dollar, but don't get into crypto. It's the wrong space.
Yes, not financial advice.
I agree.
Financial advice.
I'm not. You're right. No, I'm not even talking about like buying. I'm not even talking. No. You're
risk.
right.
You're
Sorry.
talking about risk.
No, I'm talking even like it then become a gold trader. No, I'm talking about building. I'm never. Everybody knows. This is not even that. This is not financial advice. I'm not even talking about that.
Yeah. No, we do that all the time. Every time there's a statement made like that, we repeat, not financial advice. That's like a going joke.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a going joke that we do.
Yeah.
Every time, because people ask us questions, we'll say, the answer is blah, 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 not financial advice.
Gotcha.
Don't do what I do. You're going to get wrecked. Not financial advice. Yeah. So, building on what Philippe was touching on the pillars, let's ask a really tough question that's kind of lingering out there. Let's give it your best shot because you're a lawyer and you're really good at this stuff. All right. The really tough question that lingers out there is you wear two hats. You're both the general counsel of IOHK and you're also the chairperson of the Cardano Foundation. And you had mentioned that at some point, the contract renewal and who's it with, it's vague because it's vague by design. So when it comes time for the contract renewal with IOHK, how do you manage that? Or how would you deconflict your roles in both organizations? Would you have to pick one side and manage from the other, or pick one side and manage from there? Or how's that going to work?
Right, it's a good question. It's sort of medium tough, and then it's not. No, so again, like the contract, I think there's a misunderstanding there, and I've addressed that before. It's the Cardano Foundation is not the contractual party to IOHK. So, and I think even the term renewal, that's actually, I have to admit, Rick, that's the first time I hear anybody saying that. So I'm not sure where that comes from. But there is no renewal necessary in place. I think the idea is that IOHK completes Cardano, and then we'll take it from there. Actually, that's where the treasury comes in, though. And that's where where the governance comes in and our final zeros and the staking, where actually then there will be a voting from the holders and the stakers, and that vote will be on the Cardano improvement along that procedure that we will call, or we already call, the Cardano improvement protocol. And then they will decide on what needs to be done with Cardano in the future after Cardano 2020. And they will allocate or make a decision on the allocation of resources meaning money. And then IOHK can be voted on or can elect or can propose itself to be the one entity doing that next iteration of Cardano. So that will be sort of the contract renewal is more going to be like step by step, like the Bitcoin improvement proposal, obviously. And then there will be step by step and piece by piece. And that's how we're going to move that beautiful Cardano protocol forward in the future. And again, indefinitely, because the tech doesn't stop and life doesn't stop and cryptocurrencies won't stop and the development of Cardano will not stop.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. That's an incredible answer. So when ProleteR is complete, it will be self-fulfilling. It'll just take care of itself. Outstanding. All right. So
good.
Continue with the pillars, Philippe, or do we want to hop over to Reddit?
Let's hop over to Reddit because we're towards the end of the podcast. So let's try to get through some of the questions. If we can try maybe a rapid fire so we can get to as many questions as possible. So,
and some of them have been answered too. Go for it, Philippe. What do you got, buddy?
Yes. Okay. Can you say the first question? I think I need to log back into this tab. I don't know why.
Okay. So I'm back onto Reddit and I'm sorted by best, starting from the top. And the first one comes from one of our popular Reddit users, Singverse. I think we all know who Singverse is. And Sing asked, "Hey Nathan, a couple of questions. In an interview, you talked about how the Cardano Foundation can potentially be run as a DAO in the future. Can you please elaborate that and the ultimate vision for CF? And is CF planning to run a stake pool?" Both of those kind of been answered. Nathan, is there anything you want to add to the how the Cardano Foundation can potentially be run as a DAO?
I love it because I actually did not say DAO, that word, and it was on my lips. It was like, oh, should I get into it? But it's another rabbit hole. So thanks a lot, Savers, for mentioning that. So now we're getting into I would actually call that the not yet discovered bleeding edge of the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. No. So DAOs are, I've said that publicly, and I am standing up to my opinion. DAOs are nowhere when it comes to our knowledge in the crypto universe on how to build a DAO, manage a DAO, use a DAO, and deal with a DAO. And we know that much. No, we're little kids, no, toying with something that could be and that we think could be very, very, very revolutionary. And so my answer is that yes. One line of thought is that the DAO will replace the foundation, and the foundation will chaperone that DAO into being. And if and when the DAO works, and that's very early to say whether that's even possible, I think it's too early to say, there could be that use case where you say, oh, wait, it's the year 2929, and the DAO works, and the community is happy with how it works, and the tech is there, and the underpinnings of a working DAO are there. And then the use of a entity called the foundation actually is no longer there. And then the foundation would actually dissolve itself and merge with the DAO, and the DAO would take over the foundation. It is just really too early to say that. And as long as that DAO doesn't work, and we all know DAOs, I say that, it's my personal opinion, DAOs don't work yet. No, we have like bits and pieces and trial and error and fixes and ugly fixes and less ugly fixes, but mostly ugly fixes. As long as it doesn't work, we do need that centralized aspect that's called a foundation or an entity subject to a law of one country. And that's what the foundation is today.
Okay, thank you for that, Nathan. And
that was a great response.
Yeah. And as far as a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, if anybody wants to look up more information on that, check out the Saturn Network. theirs works. So, I mean, as far as mechanically code wise. So check that out if you have more interest. So, and also thank you to Reddit user Singverse for putting that out there. Philippe, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sounds good. And I'd also like to add that we talked about DAOs when we had the Saturn Network people on a previous Cardano Effect podcast. So you can go ahead and check that catalog for that episode if you want to learn more. The next user is Minister C Politics. This is a multi-part question. So the first question is the chairman position a full-time paid job? Second question is, how's your day-to-day, which was answered earlier. Third question, what was your biggest challenge taking over? And what did surprise you about the old foundation decision? It says, thanks, love your speaking style.
I think let's do one by one, because
Yes.
I think I already forgot the second one.
Okay.
So the first one is no, it's a part-time paid position.
Okay.
And then the second one was what?
The second one was, well, how's your day-to-day was already answered. What was your
Yeah.
biggest challenge taking over?
Oh, that's a good one. I could write books about that one. I think, truth told, the biggest challenge was to take over, because we had to replace the previous, let's call it management or chairperson. That was the real challenge. I would almost say that once the new council was on board, because we've done so much prior work of checklists and what to do and so on, that once in end of December 2018, once this was done, we could simply just start working, and that was then you just do it, and that was sort of simpler. It was the year 2018 that was hard. The year 2019 was just normal work and action and just doing it. Nike.
Okay. I like that. Okay, so I think that's it. Minister C Politics, thanks to you for your Reddit question. Rick, I'm going to pass it over to you for the next Reddit question.
The next Reddit question kind of flows in from the previous one, where Manly Dodds asks, hi, Nathan. I really like how you've picked up the baton and are running with it. It's good to see some positive action from the foundation. I have two questions. Can the foundation start supporting meetups with covering the costs of space, etc.? Meetups are an essential part of the growing awareness, and we can't expect Cardano supporters to cover these costs out of their pocket. And the second question is, before we get to Goguen in 2020, can you commit to paying yourself and staff in ADA? It is always reassuring to see projects put their money where their mouth is. And the second question is really cool, because the Cody agreement and the ADA pay just came out. But question one is supporting the meetups. Now, I know you've attended them, but they're talking about the financial support and the cost.
Right, let's pick one after the other. So the meetups, that's a great question. And I think that there might be some sort of misunderstanding there, but we do cover pizza and beer for meetups, and we should have somewhere a form that makes it easier for meetup organizers to actually request a meetup financial support. So there is a financial support for meetups. When it comes to additional costs, I think we're fairly flexible, and the form should allow that as well. And if it doesn't yet, then please post something on the forum or send an email to the foundation. But we do encourage meetups, and the idea is totally not that people or organizers cover that out of their own pockets. And we do have a lot of meetups going on. There's more to that. The meetups, I think the question and the comment to the question is really very correct. Meetups are key. They're absolutely key. These meetings are absolutely key. And so we want to simplify that process, and we're working on this also on an iterative basis, so we can always improve. Everything is just work in progress. And I'm thinking we're also making our calendar and event calendaring more convenient, so you can actually find the meetups, not just hold one, but find one. We're working on this. This is work in progress. But absolutely. We also want to, there's bits and pieces, like, for example, we want to allow for easier access to video support for meetups if it's in bigger cities. So also a piece that we're working on. Obviously, quickly on the other side, and that maybe shows a bit the tension of being on the council, is we also cannot just send money because somebody says, I'll do a meetup, please send money. And I think that's fairly easy to say. And if there's a meetup and we paid money and there's a really big room and then 3 people come because 3 people came, then we can't support that either. And the community will not appreciate us paying money to a meetup with 3 people, the 3 guys that know each other, went for a beer. So it shows that the actual implementation of these things get really tricky. It looks easy at first, and you realize, oh wait, I may have 10 friends, and we all go for a beer. We call it a meetup, and Cardano will pay for the beers. That also cannot be it. So it's a bit trickier than that. But yeah, we're working on it. Now, of course, I managed to forget the second question, because I think that was the first one.
Okay, well, that was a good answer to the first question. So basically, if I'm an anonymous user and my avatar is a picture of a cat and I ask you for money, you're not going to give me money. I totally get that. I completely agree with that. Okay, but what we'll do...
Let me stop you right there. The question of anonymous users has been discussed within the foundation for the whole year and the past year as well. And it's very tricky. And one single answer is that we share an understanding at the foundation that there is a need and interest and use case for anonymous users and anonymous community managers. So we actually support anonymous users and anonymous community managers. And if an anonymous person came to us to organize a meetup, we would actually not say we don't support that. So you see how tricky it gets when you go down the rabbit hole?
Yeah. You got a lot of rabbit holes to deal with.
Oh yeah.
I don't envy you one bit. I do not envy your position. Okay. Yeah. So what we will do is we'll get links down below for the payment form for meetups. That'll be in the description, and the link to find the meetups. Okay. And that'll help with Manny Lee Dad's question. Thank you, Manny Lee. The second question was, before we get to Goguen in 2020, can you commit to paying yourself and your staff in ADA?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. So, oh my God, this is a good one too. There are many answers to this. And first answer is, in order to be able to pay in ADA, we need to have the underpinnings and actually the technological underpinnings that enable an easy administration within let's call it a company, although a foundation is not a company, but within an entity to administer ADA payments. And that's not easy. Everybody knows that we can't just have, let's say, a admin person at the foundation to have access of the wallet for all gazillion ADAs that the foundation holds, and then we send her an email and say, hey, please send some some ADA to that address. No, that's not how it works. So we have been really busy, and that took a substantial amount of time and resources to implement a custody solution with the Swiss entity called Crypto Custody Limited. You can look that up on the internet. And they have exactly these sort of tools that have handheld terminals. So that's a piece of hardware. And then there's a cryptographic custody management that's fairly complicated and fairly secure. There are IC cards, there are PIN codes, there are protocols and payment and workflows for confirmation and testing and so on. And we've implemented that, which sort of like, let's say by now or by today, does allow us to make secure, manageable, and auditable payments in ADA. That's only the first partial question answer now. The second answer is, do people actually want to be paid in ADA? Oh my God, then it gets very complicated, because the easy answer to that is no. People don't necessarily want to be paid in ADA because they need to pay their bills in fiat. And if you work for the Cardano Foundation, you actually want to get in the currency, you want to get paid in the currency that you need to pay the phone bill. And so you see, it gets trickier and trickier. And we are thinking of making payments in ADA on purpose for smaller amounts and smaller contributions. So, for example, the Meetup guys, that doesn't work. Why would we pay the why would we reimburse the US dollar meetup costs for a beer in San Francisco in ADA and then force the meetup organizer to it doesn't make sense, no. But for other smaller parts, so for the ambassadors and specific smaller services provided, we are absolutely looking in paying that in ADA. Although, again, with the caveat, what if people don't want it? And then we need to make 2 different payments, one through the banking system and one through the ADA crypto custody system. How do you administer that if it's, let's say, 100 to 200 payments a month? Big questions, no easy answer.
It's probably a lot of work, but, I'd take the ADA. That's just me. I'll take the fiat and convert in data. No. But I do got to hand it to you, Nathan. You got a tough job because, everyone knows Cardano Foundation sitting on a bag of like 680 million ADA. It's on a blockchain. It's like number 3 on the list. And Nathan has to defend that. He's not a big giant bag of money or a pinata where you just beat on the pinata and this money comes flying out. He's got to make sure that ADA is going to the right place. So again, I don't envy your position, sitting on a bag that big and having to figure out, okay, what do we do with this, most efficiently in the best interest of the community. I imagine that might keep you awake at night sometimes because that's a lot. It's a big responsibility.
That is a tough one. It is. That was a good question.
Yeah. Thank you.
A lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Thanks, Manly Dad. All right. And thank you, Nathan, so much. Philippe, a few more and we're ready to wrap.
Yeah. Yes. Let's speed through these questions. So this one is from ADS CPA. Is getting ADA listed on a US-based exchange a priority for the Cardano Foundation? I feel like getting listed on Coinbase or Gemini would follow under the driving adoption of Cardano and facilitating partnerships. I'd like to add that Bittrex, it's on Bittrex, and I heard that it might be on Binance US. So US customers do have the ability
to on Kraken. Purchase. You can buy
Kraken.
Direct with fiat. Yeah. You can buy direct with fiat.
I guess the question was more for Coinbase, and I don't know if you want to answer that. If not, we can answer that because we've answered that countless times before.
We've already answered it.
Yeah, we can have competing answers. How about that? No, but I think that the answer is simple. Listing on major exchanges is always a priority. Yeah, I think that's as easy as that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
What's your answer?
Well, we always say that we're going to get added to Coinbase once we hit our Shelley mainnet. Once it's truly decentralized, the platform is truly decentralized, then the talks with Coinbase can start again. Because one of the when you look at their guidelines to how a cryptocurrency is added to Coinbase, that is one of the guidelines, and we haven't hit that milestone yet. So for us to even be considered, we have to make sure that we check off all the check marks for Coinbase, and then maybe sometime next year, maybe a little bit after that. But I'm sure the talks are going on, and I'm sure that both parties are aware of each other.
Yeah, it won't get listed on Coinbase while it's federated.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, next question.
All right, Tony from Shoshone. Yes. Howdy, Nathan. I really appreciate all your hard work and dedication to the Cardano project and the foundation support of the 2019 WIO Hackathon. As you know, Wyoming has been creating blockchain-friendly laws, along with Germany, and for the last couple of years, and has a few more in the pipeline for 2020. Globally, what do you see as the biggest legal hurdles or obstacles that hinder the wide-scale adoption of Cardano? Great question. What are the biggest obstacles, Nathan?
Right. Again, I immediately, the first partial answer is it's not the biggest obstacle for Cardano. It's the biggest obstacle for crypto now. So it's really, everybody falls into the same hat or category. So the biggest obstacle is always legal insecurity. That's if there's a legal obstacle and a big obstacle, it's the legal insecurity, a lack of legal security, so that people and companies don't know what to expect and don't know what the future will bring. So if there's one thing we want, it's legal security. And maybe a very interesting case to explain that is the bit license in New York. When the bit license came, it was sort of deemed a disaster and everybody left. And it was like, oh my God, it's like the overreaction and overregulation. And arguably it was. It was an overreaction. It wasn't mature. It wasn't thought through. It was overregulated. It was too tedious, and everybody did leave. But, and then there's a big but now. How old is the bid license? 3 years? Maybe 4? No? 3-4 years later, what happens is that New York is still New York. And there are bid licensed companies out there that are massive. And they went through the tedious procedure. And it was tedious, and it cost money. It was lengthy, and it slowed things down. But now the companies have the bid license, and they're good to go, and they know where they're at and where they will be. So even a license regime that goes too far and is too tedious, it makes everybody leave. In the long term, it's a good thing because people at least know what to do, and we have a thriving cryptocurrency business and thriving cryptocurrency businesses operating out of New York. So lack of regulation and lack of clarity, that's an obstacle.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Tony from Shoshone. That was a great question and great response from Nathan. We're going to move on to the next question. Let's try to knock out a couple more, Rick. I don't know if we're going to get to all of them. But the next question is from Velvia695. Will the Cardano Foundation pick up the ADA debit card project again?
I want to just quickly say thanks, Rick, and good hearing from you. I kind of forgot to say that. Right. So for the debit card is a good one. That's an oldie but a goodie, like many of these questions. And we're in talk with, I don't know, it's more than the fingers on my hand of different debit card projects. And that is really it's a really good question, because what happens is people talk about this. Some people talk about this, and some people ask for this. But the truth is, we have talked with all these companies, and we're in constant talk with all these companies. There is not really a demand. That's not a popular thing to say, but actually people in the aggregate don't really want these debit cards. Some people say we want to see the debit cards, but nobody really wants the debit card for him or herself. And so this now becomes immediately that triage and allocation resource problem. Is like, should we do things just so we say we did it and it looks good not on paper but on the internet, but there's no demand? Or is that something that we say, oh wait, the reality doesn't want that? And by the way, for many reasons, why don't people, we can drill down. That's the 8th rabbit hole here. Why don't people want to have debit cards? Because people don't want to pay in crypto because they hope the price increases. No investment advice. And you see, I learned. and so they don't want to spend their crypto. They don't want to spend their crypto. It's just not, you don't pay your pizza in crypto. Because if you pay your pizza in crypto, who are you going to be? You're going to be that guy that paid 20 or 40 million in US dollars for a pizza, and everybody's laughing at you for the next 20 years. No investment advice.
We call him Bitcoin Jesus. You got to have that guy. That's probably us right now. We did competitions like to build this podcast where what were the prizes? It was like 2,000 some ADA.
Yes.
Okay, 10 years from now, I'm going to be crying going, oh my gosh, you can buy a Lambo with 2,000 ADA. It's a risk you take, but at least we know because Bitcoin Jesus made that sacrifice and bought 2 pizzas. So
no investment advice.
Yeah.
No investment advice. Exactly.
Not financial advice.
Yeah.
Not financial advice. It could all go to zero, not financial advice. Yeah. Oh, the next question, I'll throw this one out there, but then I got to kind of correct it. We do need to get down to Merrick Mayhut's question also. Mayhut down below. Oracle had a question. Oracle, thank you. You're a very common asker there on Reddit. We appreciate your inputs. And Oracle asked, Nathan, are you grateful towards the Cardano Effect hosts for being partially responsible in making this distinguished position available for you? And just for the record, that's the question. And just for the record, Philippe and I don't make the news. We only report the news. I just coincidentally happen to be a former Guardian, and we reported the news. I'm sure there was a legal bloodbath going on in the background that we were not aware of, but I'm pretty sure that was the case.
That's a terse statement. I don't think it's completely accurate. So,
but it's a fair. If people think that, then it's good to address it and say, okay, so what do we think? So it's fair enough. We just report the news. We didn't make the news. Fair enough. Is that a good answer?
I think my answer would have been it was truly a team effort. No, yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
It
That
was
sounds
a
good.
team effort.
Thank you, Oracle
Although,
33355. We always see you asking questions on all of our guests, and we appreciate you. So next question from College Board 1123. I see big proponent of Cardano here. Congrats to the team thus far, and thanks for this community podcast. The hosts are fantastic. Thank you. We appreciate you tuning in. I have missed this elsewhere, but I had a few questions about future regulatory conditions and the steps Cardano is making to ensure its place as a future leader in the cryptocurrency space. The first question is Cardano working with any U.S. regulators to make sure that they are compliant with the government? And I think they're referring to taxes and payment-wise. And the second question is, what about the rest of the world and regulations? So the first question is about U.S. regulation, and the second question is about the rest of the world regulation. We briefly touched on this on the in the beginning of the podcast, but if you wanted to add anything, be my guest.
right. Again, so we're obviously dealing with lawyers, we're dealing with compliance firms, we're dealing with think tanks. I myself at the Berkeley Klein Center at Harvard University, dealing just with that, with crypto. And within these different conversations, we're also dealing with government agencies and regulators in many ways, from coffee to phone calls to emails to everything. So yes, the answer is yes. Of course, we're in that space. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then when it comes to international efforts, it's sort of the same. And here again, really the key tool is really concerted efforts within the crypto industry. It's not one protocol reaching out to one regulator that's going to change anything. If anything, you'll have contradictory messages, which will lead to exactly nothing whatsoever. No? So you need to unify the voice, yeah, and that's we're part of that play, and we want to be part of the good guys, helping everybody else to move the space forward and have that tiny slice of the pie that's like, hardly a degree, make bigger so it becomes the big pie. Yeah. We need to make the pie bigger and not just get our slice bigger. Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant. I'm glad we have an experienced lawyer on the team.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Okay, so
Rick,
thank you.
Want to grab just a couple more questions and then and then wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we rapid firing it through the rest, but the next one is a long one from. No, thank you, College Board, for that one. We appreciate it. Next one was from Reagan Dunnigan. He said, "Thank you for the hard work, Nathan, for your hard work and dedication to the project." He would like to ask if there have been any high-level discussions around using the Cardano network as a backbone for multiple industries outside of just finance, and you touched on that earlier with the diamond industry and other things that we just learned about. So is there anything you'd like to add? Anything outside of finance, identity management, diamond, and anything?
Well, the easy answer is absolutely yes, totally super yes. I mean, again, diamonds is one thing, and we're not far there, but we're further with supply chain, which is outside finance. And by the way, finance plays into everything. Everything is also, there's a financial component, but supply chain, IoT, means identity of physical objects and identity of individuals. We're trying to be a player in all of these, and we have ongoing projects and discussions and yeah, absolutely. Well, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And he gave examples of like medical data security, so that's good. And I guess you're looking at all those angles. All right, Philippe, you want the next one from Merrick Mayhut?
All right, MMA Hut. It's hello, Nathan. Given CF is not planning on running their own staking pools, I would like to ask if CF is planning on distributing its stake also across community staking pools, non-IOHK and Emerco pools.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that one. We're actually just discussing this, and there's different ways. We haven't really taken a decision yet. We'll most likely piggyback on IOHK stake pool for simplicity, yeah, and to again allocation of resources. If we have to spread that between the 50 plus staking pools that we hear of, or stake pools that we hear of. We don't really know yet how to do this. So for the testnet, at least, we're piggybacking on IOHK, and then we'll take it from there. And there's an equity issue here now, and we can't just say we'll pick one out of the 50 pools, and then the others are like, why didn't you pick us? And how would you make, you see, and that's a rabbit hole number 17. How would you pick and make the parameters transparent to say we pick these and those based on money only, but what about security, based on security only, but what about money, and so on and so on. So, big questions, tough one, but a good one.
It is. Yep. We just got to be alert to the archetype called success to the successful. That is a archetype that may occur. So we'll look at that further in a different podcast. We'll talk about it on this Saturday's live stream.
Sounds good.
And make sure people understand what that means. All right. Thank you for the answer there, Nathan. And from Merrick, we appreciate your questions. The next one was from Jay Rusaeda, and he asked, does the Cardano Foundation plan to release any working products on the Cardano blockchain? For example, Kaiser from Emergo or Atala from IOHK? And who would win? Who would win in a boxing match between you and Parsons? Okay, don't worry about that. So is there a product? Thank you, Jay Rusa-Ada, for that question. Let's stick to the one that says, does the Cardano Foundation plan to release working products on the blockchain? I don't know.
Okay, that's an easy one. The answer is no, absolutely not. No, we that's the same as the stake pools. Like, we're not going to release our own. We're going to help others release, and we're going to be involved in enabling others to release, but we're not going to release something on our own. We don't want to be a competitor to all our precious developer community out there. We want to enable them to not be a competitor with them. That wouldn't be the right thing. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, got it. So Emergo and IOHK, the main product developers, business developers, engineering facility. Gotcha. Cool. Thank you, Jay Russo, for the question. Philippe, almost ready, almost done.
Okay. This one is from J.M. Cowell. This says, could you explain what process will the Cardano Foundation follow for bringing new members to the board before and after the ProleteR era?
We're actually working on this, and we're actually expanding the council as we speak, and I think that will be news in the next 2-3 days, or even today possibly. And that's our next step, and then there will be a next step after next step, but we're working on this. Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Let's see. Could you please explain the process of Cardano? Okay, you got that one, the board members. Oh, I think the reason people ask that question is people often ask, when are you going to get like Japanese people on the Cardano Foundation Council? When are you going to get people from Africa, from countries aside from who you have now? I think that's where the core of the question comes from. Can you expand on that a little? Is there a plan to bring members of from Asia and Africa onto the board, South America?
Right. So it's a council, it's not the board. No. So there's different ways of thinking about that, and we're exactly doing this right now. One possible way is to say that the council will be relegated to a supervision role only, and will install a proper board of directors that's going to be operational and would have all these broad diversity and also a higher number of people. Obviously, we can't have 20 people on such a new board of directors, because it's not more people the better. That's crowd stupidity instead of crowd wisdom, or wisdom of the crowd. So one way is to say that the council is just doing supervision, and we have install a proper board of directors that's diverse. And there's many different ways of doing this. So that would be sort of a dual board structure, like you have in Germany and in many other places. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like members of the council from different countries. I think they're just looking for representation. Is how I've heard it framed before.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, because people ask these kind of questions, like the staking question was probably related to, people were thinking, oh, well, if you got all those big bags of ADA, why don't you stake them out to all the other pools? That's because if the Cardano Foundation stakes all their ADA back to IOHK, people are going to be like, well, wait a second, what about me? So that's a tough thing to manage. Same thing with the boards. You got to manage the boards, and people want to see representation from different geographical and cultural representation on the council or the board, or whichever it's called.
Yeah. All right. Or both, the council and the board. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's nuanced though, Rick. So I understand those concerns from the community, but Nathan was bringing up some solid concerns as well. Delegating to community pools, choosing which one is you're going to delegate your funds to, and why not this one? Why this one? Why this percentage? Why that percentage? It's a lot more convoluted than I initially thought. So thanks for bringing up those points, Nathan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right, just a few left.
We have 3 more questions. Rick, you want to get the next one?
Yes. This is from Mystical Writer. That was, how has the global legal landscape for cryptocurrency changed in the past 2 years? And what are the most promising initiatives and developments you see happening today? So let's start. That's good. What is the biggest changes in the past 2 years?
Sorry, on a regulatory basis, was that?
The global legal landscape. Yeah, so the regulatory base.
Yeah.
Well, arguably nothing has changed, and that's probably a bad thing. When you look at the US, outside of the bit license, arguably no major laws have really been changed or so. So not much has really changed. There is more clarity and understanding. The one change that did take place is that regulators and governance and law enforcement better understands crypto. So I would call that a change, and that's a good thing. But on a regulatory basis, in the sense of laws and regulations, not much has changed, unfortunately. But there's a better grasp of by regulators and government authorities of what crypto does and does not, and that's a good thing. So that has changed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it. Something last week on Germany. Big change there, where they made it very crypto friendly.
Right. So you have bits and pieces. Now you have Switzerland, you have Germany, you have New York, but that's 3 countries now, or 3 jurisdictions. Let's call it that. And even in Germany, I think the German laws are out there now, and we'll see what it does. But actual implementation matters, and let's see. Let's see. Let's see.
It takes time. It takes time. Change Management by Ken Blanchard takes 20 years to affect change. 20 years.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mystical Rider. The next question is from Vitus. What is triggered as Cardano Foundation planning for 2020? I don't understand how that question's worded. Is that a typo, Rick? Am I reading it correctly? I'm not. What is triggered as Cardano Foundation planning for 2020?
I think the question is, what is the plan for 2020? To summarize.
Okay.
Right.
What's the plan for 2020?
Okay.
Right. So the plan, we do have an internal, we used to call it roadmap, and then we had to change it because there's the Cardano roadmap. So the Cardano Foundation roadmap versus the Cardano roadmap, that was a bit confusing. So I think now we call it the master plan, and we have that document, and it's long, and we're now internally discussing the sort of like detailed master plan for the next year. And that's going to be putting into writing a lot of the work that's already been done this year into actions. And here I come back again. If you want to have like that super clear, call it roadmap or not roadmap, or master plan and triggers and so on, then it probably isn't the right thing, because everything changes every 2 months. And we know that. If you're in the crypto space, like every 2 months, there's like, oh my God, I never thought this would happen. It's like, oh my God, I never thought that would happen. And then it happens, and then you need to deal with it. And so the more rigid the roadmap is, the less you actually allow the ecosystem and the protocol to just prosper. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Nathan. And thank you, Vitus. Philippe, you may take the last one?
Yeah, you take it.
Okay, I can answer this one. Mango SR asks, is it possible to run my own node and stake myself instead of delegating? If possible, do I need to be registered to do so? And the answers are yes and yes. You can create your own node and stake to yourself. And if possible, do you need to be registered? The answer is yes, you self-register. There is no request permission. This is a permissionless blockchain. You self-register a certificate, you pay for the fee for the certificate, and you become your own stake pool, pointing to yourself. The drawback is you have to keep that node online 24/7. You got to keep it online all the time. You can't just turn it off, or you won't get any rewards, and it will impact the blockchain.
For most of the people holding ADA, it's going to make more sense to delegate to a stake pool than run your own node. While you can do it, there are lots of different factors that come into play regarding how much stake you're actually delegating to your own pool. and whether or not you have the proper equipment to run it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are professional solutions that are going to exist out there, and plugging it into your home Wi-Fi, it could be spotty. So if you want to make sure that you try to guarantee the maximum amount of uptime and maximize the amount of ADA rewards that you get over a given epoch, delegating to a pool is great as well. And if you have the experience and the hardware to do it yourself, by all means, go for it.
Yeah.
Great answers, guys. Great answers. Yeah. Great job.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Nathan. All right. Thank you to all our Redditors. Philippe, that's all I have for this. I would like to thank Nathan for coming on the podcast. It was great having you on here. You were able to answer all of those questions. It's fantastic. I think our viewers are going to be grateful. They're going to learn that Nathan is a warm and friendly guy, not some dark, seedy person in a trench coat in a back alley, and that you're very open and you're fun to talk to. And we've seen you at all these meetups. So thanks for doing that and getting out there and giving these presentations. And thank you for coming on the podcast as well.
Yes.
And thanks, Philippe. Thanks, Rick. And thanks to the community for everything. And it's great to be here. It was really a great time. A lot of fun.
Awesome. So I'm going to wrap this up. So this is episode 62 of the Cardano Effect podcast. We had Nathan Kaiser on. And as the summary of this, we're on the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge, straight from Nathan's mouth. And we really appreciate you coming on. This is our second guest from the Cardano Foundation. We had Niels and Andy on, I don't know, a couple months ago now.
And Maki and Ben.
We had
a team, 4 people, yeah.
Exactly. But they were just joining the foundation when we had them on. I mean, they were probably newer members. So this is really the first time we have access to speak with someone at the foundation who's been seasoned and has a lot to offer to the community. So we really appreciate you giving us the time today and coming on. And I think people will really enjoy this episode. I think this is you hit it out the park here. So once again, everyone, if you're not subscribed to the Cardano Effect podcast, please consider subscribing. Really helps us out. Really helps you out. I mean, if you really want the longevity of this ecosystem to continue year after year after year, you have to think that people are going to come year after year after year, and they need somewhere to find information. In the Cardano Effect, we're trying to be that source of information for the community. So without further ado, I'm going to close this episode. We appreciate you, Nathan, and you are welcome on this podcast anytime, whenever you want to come on, whether you have an announcement or you just want to talk to us. We would love to have you on again. And until the next episode of the Cardano Effect, bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me. All the best. Bye-bye.